It would appear as though the first major domino in the NFL head coaching carousel has fallen into place, as it's being reported that the Buffalo Bills have decided to hire former Jets head coach Rex Ryan to be their new head man. And I have to be honest, I'm having trouble kind of figuring this one out. This one, frankly, caught me more than a little bit by surprise. I just really don't get the logic here. I really don't understand it. Now, don't get me wrong. Rex Ryan's not just some bum coordinator from a second-rate offense or defensive unit in the National Football League. This isn't just some no-name guy. Here is a guy that does have previous NFL head coaching experience. This is a guy that once led his New York Jets teams to back-to-back AFC championship games with Mark Sanchez at quarterback of all things. Here's a guy who historically has had his teams perform very well against and match up very well with the New England Patriots, who are the gold standard in that division. And when you're talking about having to get to the playoffs, always the quickest path, the easiest path potentially to the playoffs is by winning your division. It's the only guaranteed way to make the playoffs, as you found out in the NFC South this year. Well, Rex Ryan's teams have traditionally matched up well with the Patriots. They haven't always beat them, but they've matched up well against them. And you're also taking a Rex Ryan who is a very good defensive mind and bringing him into what is already a very good defensive situation. You're not asking Rex Ryan to build up this defense. There's already a strong Buffalo Bills defense in place, easily one of the 10 best units in the National Football League. Sometimes a way to get better, frankly, is to add strength to strength. And another good thing, I suppose, from a Bills organization standpoint and perhaps a Bills fan standpoint, is you don't think he's going to pull a Doug Marrone. He's not going to sit there and put in 2 years and then want to cut tail and run. Furthermore, Rex Ryan is the type of individual that, unlike a Marrone, would seem more likely to be able to elicit respect from his players and his peers. So there are some good things that Ryan brings to the table, but here's where I'm really having trouble figuring out where this makes a whole lot of sense. You're the Buffalo Bills. Ever since that Nashville nightmare that's also called the Music City Miracle, you haven't made the playoffs since. That's 15 seasons without the playoffs. So you think Rex Ryan, a guy whose Jets teams missed the playoffs the past 4 seasons, is the guy to change all of that? Doesn't really make much sense to me. You would think if you wanted to get to the playoffs that you would bring somebody who has recently been to the playoffs, whether as a head coach or as a coordinator. Ryan's teams with the Jets haven't been to the playoffs since 2010. That's 4 seasons. You know, he's had as many playoff appearances as a head coach the past 4 seasons the Bills have as a team. That's 0. And you're talking about potentially another Jets situation here too, where you have no real clear answer at quarterback. That position is potentially a mess. With a questionable offense that lacks a lot of skill talent. You're also talking about, frankly, if we're being honest here, because of the fact the Bills haven't made the playoffs in 15 seasons, another questionable front office situation. So in many ways, this job mirrors what Rex Ryan had to deal with and was faced with and encountered with the New York Jets. And you're also bringing Rex Ryan into a situation where maybe you're bringing him in again to another Jets-like situation where you're too defense-oriented. That was the big bugaboo for those Ryan teams the last few years with the Jets. There was no balance. There was no real threat of the offense stepping up and winning games for that team. They were mediocre, flat-out bad on that side of the ball. And even on defense, they weren't nearly as good as people believed them to be. They weren't nearly as good as they should have been based off of the amount of draft pick and financial investment that was spent on that side of the ball. Look up the numbers. They bear it out, I promise you. And the record most certainly bears it out. So now you bring them into another situation where you could potentially be doing the same damn thing. It really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And while he's a previous NFL head coach, and he's enjoyed some success as a head coach, and he has matched up well with his teams against the Patriots, this is still a guy that in his 6 years as the head coach of the Jets, his teams had a losing record in the division, 15-21. And you're bringing a guy into a situation where you had a Bills team that went 9-7 this 2014 season. And the Jets went 4-12. So you're bringing a guy in that coached a team that finished 5 games behind you record-wise in 2014. There's just a lot of things to me that just don't really wash and just don't really add up, and frankly suggest that this move just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Now, it could work out. The Bills could get to the playoffs as soon as 2015, and in fact, I might very well put money on that. But again, for so many reasons, as I've just so eloquently stated, the Bills situation is a lot like the Jets. If you're the Bills, why the hell would you want to be like the Jets? If you haven't made the playoffs in 15 seasons, why would you want to bring in a guy that hasn't made the playoffs in 4 seasons? If you want to enjoy success and you want to make the playoffs, and the only guaranteed way to make the playoffs, either in the AFC or the NFC, is to win your division, why would you want to sit there and bring in a guy that never won the damn division, never won the AFC East, and hasn't, again, made the playoffs in 4 years. Furthermore, has a losing record in the division. It's not even close, 15-21. And a guy that, again, I have to emphasize this, coached a team that went 4-12 in 2014, while your team, coached by Doug Marrone, went 9-7. And he was more of an offensive-minded guy, and the offense was bad with him. How much worse is it going to be under Rex Ryan? This is one of these situations where just because a guy has a name and just because a guy has previous NFL head coaching experience, it doesn't necessarily mean that it makes a whole lot of sense. I envisioned that Rex Ryan was going to get an NFL head coaching job, and I really truly thought that the Atlanta Falcons were a much better fit. There was a team with a high-powered offense already in place, with a legit franchise quarterback in Matt Ryan, where now you could bring in a Rex Ryan to an organization, a situation where that defense has been bad for a number of years under previous head coach Mike Smith, and you turn it around and you're really potentially dealing with something. And all the while, it's not a Jets situation because that offense is stacked, and that offense has a real deal quarterback that Rex Ryan doesn't have to worry about. So this hire makes no sense to me from an Atlanta Falcons standpoint because he should have been their guy, and it most certainly makes very little sense to me from a Buffalo Bills standpoint. The purpose of making a change, even though you didn't necessarily choose this change because Marrone cut tail and ran out of town, is to upgrade. It's not to make a lateral move in potentially even a downgrade, and that's exactly what this looks like. This looks like, at best, a lateral move that will have just a little bit of short-term payoff, but long-term will ultimately become another Jets situation, and if anything, will eventually prove itself out to be a downgrade. I'm really having trouble figuring out how this makes much sense for the Buffalo Bills organization. And maybe, just maybe, this is just further proof of why this organization hasn't made the playoffs in over 15 seasons. It's because of decisions like this.